Hello and welcome back to State of Games, part of the GI Live series of digital events. This event is all about the state of the video games market, where it is now, where it might be headed in the immediate future. If you've missed any of the talks so far, don't worry, you can watch them all on YouTube right now, actually, if you want to go back. But don't go back, for our next talk is just about to begin. We have Sensor Tower here to talk to us about the state of mobile games. So over to Sensor Tower's Craig Chappell.
Hey everyone, Craig Chappell here from mobile intelligence firm Sensor Tower. Thanks for joining the GamesIndustry.biz live state of play event and tuning into this talk. Today we're going to talk about the state of mobile gaming in 2020 and provide insights into a number of key mobile gaming trends and take a closer look at the impact the global COVID-19 pandemic and lockdowns have had on the mobile games industry. Firstly, just a quick introduction to who I am and what Sensor Tower does. So I'm Craig Chappell and I'm the Mobile Insights Strategist for EMEA at Sensor Tower. I keep an eye on the trends in the mobile gaming world, write analysis for our blog on what's going on in the industry using market data from our platform. As well as our blog, I've written articles for publications such as GamesIndustry.biz, MCV Develop, and I've appeared on the excellent Deconstructor of Fun podcast. Previously, I've worked as the senior editor for mobile games business website PocketGamer.biz, and I also created and ran the Pocket Gamer Mobile Games Awards. Prior to that, I've worked at Nintendo and Develop Magazine. As for Sensor Tower, our platform leverages billions of data points to offer unparalleled real-time analysis for millions of apps and thousands of publishers in all major countries and categories. Trusted by Fortune 100 companies, top research institutions, major news publications, and leading financial firms, Sensor Tower serves more than 500,000 mobile apps worldwide. Our tools include store intelligence, ad intelligence, and usage intelligence, and you can find out more by visiting sensortower.com or contacting us directly. The first thing we're going to look at in this presentation is the past few years in the global mobile gaming space, showing how downloads and user spending has grown over the years and the most popular categories. Then later, I'll discuss mobile gaming trends and how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted growth. So this chart shows the quarterly growth in the number of game downloads from Q1 2016 to Q4 2019 before the COVID-19 pandemic. As you can see, the mobile game downloads have increased each year. So even before the pandemic, which we'll go into later, the market has consistently been on the up. From 2018 to 2019, the number of installs rose 11% year on year to 42.3 billion. India generated the most downloads of any country, accumulating 5.9 billion installs in 2019. The leading category for downloads is the hyper-casual games market. The top 100 hyper-casual games combined for more than 4.7 billion downloads worldwide last year. Similar to downloads, global revenue from user spending has reliably risen each year, in fact growing every half a year. In 2019, user spending hit a record $63 billion, up 17% year on year. The US led the way for user spending last year, with revenue hitting $16.2 billion, up 25% year on year. Japan, meanwhile, ranked second for revenue, while China ranked third. It's important to note that we only use estimates from the App Store and Google Play and not other third-party Android stores. This means that China still ranks third for revenue globally, based solely on its App Store spending, not including those other third-party Android stores. The three biggest games of 2019 were Honor of Kings, PUBG Mobile, known as Game for Peace in China, and Fate Grand Order. All games hailing from Asia, and specifically China and Japan. While there are some newcomers to the top grossing global games every now and then, like PUBG Mobile, for instance, many of these titles have held these positions for years. One interesting thing to note from this chart is the period of 2018 and early 2019. This chart still shows user spending growth despite the game licensing freeze which occurred in China in 2018 and the slow resumption of approvals in December 2018 and at the start of 2019. During this time, China App Store revenue was flat, but the global market still saw a good increase regardless. Taking a look at some global category trends for 2019, we can see that on the App Store, role-playing games dominated spending on iOS. The category is particularly strong in China, with players there contributing 39% of the genre's revenue. In fact, 80% of the category's revenue comes from Asia alone. One thing that we've highlighted here that's important is the regional leanings towards particular subcategories, such as casino in the United States, with the country accounting for 63% of its user spending. Looking at Google Play, role-playing games make up an even larger share of user spending than that on the App Store. Other lucrative categories also include strategy and casino, which are more prominent here than on Apple's store. As we've noted here, the outsized popularity of RPGs across both stores has led publishers to integrate some of their trademark elements into puzzle, simulation, and other titles to aid engagement. Think of titles like Empires and Puzzles by the Zynga-owned Small Giant Games, for example. One important thing to note to make sense of this data is that on the app stores, publishers can choose two categories, e.g. strategy and RPG, while on Google Play, publishers can choose just one category. So depending on how publishers categorize their apps, they can potentially skew revenue figures, particularly if it's a title you may not typically associate with that genre, such as PUBG Mobile being tagged as a strategy game, for example. So it's important to kind of keep an eye on those things. Next up, we're going to look at a few of the big mobile gaming trends in 2020. Firstly, we'll talk about battle passes and subscriptions. I'm sure this is nothing new to you, as these monetization models are proving to be increasingly popular in mobile gaming, particularly amongst the top-level games. And we're not referring to VIP monetization, for example, which has been around for a long time. Battle passes, as really popularized by Fortnite, have players spending money each season, which can last any length of time and rewards players with special content, such as cosmetic items in Fortnite. Despite how well the Battle Pass has performed for Fortnite, publishers haven't been able to copy and paste this model at will, but there have been a few key successes. As you can see from the chart here, one of those is Supercell's Clash of Clans. While still making a lot of money, user spending had been on the decline since 2015, dropping to an estimated 572 million in 2018. In 2019, however, Supercell introduced the Gold Pass and Season Challenges into the game. This helped spur a jump in revenue spending, in user spending for 2019, driving sales of in-app purchases up 27% year on year to an estimated $722 million. The challenge, of course, is maintaining this, but it certainly seems to have stemmed the decline ever since, for a game that was released back in 2012. Another game that has had a huge success for the Battle Pass system is PUBG Mobile, with its Royale Pass helping the title generate sales of approximately $3.2 billion from the App Store and Google Play to date. This number doesn't include revenue from third-party Android stores, such as those available in China, for example. As well as the Battle Pass, there's also the more traditional subscription model, which asks for users to subscribe for a regular length of time, typically monthly. We've seen this used by Nintendo, for example, in Animal Crossing and Mario Kart Tour to some success, with the latter baking it in from the start. We've increasingly seen passes and subscriptions proving to be a viable complement to traditional monetization models across an increasingly wide variety of game genres. It'll be interesting to see in future how many games and genres are able to utilize this successfully. But it is important to note that it doesn't always work. Clash Royale, for example, does have a Battle Pass system, and that hasn't helped increase revenue as it did with Clash of Clans. The second trend we've highlighted is games cutting through the noise with big IP. Utilizing big entertainment IP isn't exactly a new phenomenon, but what is interesting in particular is how classic console IP from the world's biggest publishers is making an impact on mobile. As you can see here, Mario Kart Tour generated 124 million downloads in its first month, Call of Duty 148 million, and Pokemon Go 163 million. For context, Mario Kart Tour and Call of Duty Mobile were two of 2019's biggest launches. And these aren't hyper-casual titles. These are big titles with in-app purchases and the long term built in mind. Looking deeper and at the all-important revenue, 4 of last year's top 10 grossing games were based on console or PC IP. In the top 30 grossers, 7 of these were based on these big IPs. We're increasingly seeing big publishers either developing in-house or seeking partnerships to bring their console and PC titles to mobile audiences, in turn creating new business opportunities for them. So keep an eye out. The next trend we're seeing is that the mobile market is growing for everyone. This isn't to downplay the challenges of entering the market, which are significant for those looking to release a top grossing title, but the data is at least promising as it shows that more money is being shared around. In 2019, the top 10 grossing games generated approximately $9.7 billion, which was up 5.2% year on year. However, the share of revenue for the top 10 actually decreased from 17.2% in 2018 to 15.8% in 2019. This means games outside of the top 10 are getting a bigger slice of the pie. For example, the top 11 to 30 mobile games generated $8.8 billion last year, up 15.9% year on year. So more mobile game makers than ever are realizing significant success outside of the top 10 for their in-app purchase focused titles. There's a bit of a disclaimer on this trend, however, and that is the rate of consolidation continuing. The likes of Stillfront, Scopely, Ubisoft, Zynga, AppLovin, and others are making big acquisitions and investments in the market, meaning more studios are becoming interconnected. So the large IP holders are also realizing the challenges of breaking into the mobile gaming space and are seeking deals with experienced studios to fulfill their ambitions. Sometimes this doesn't include mergers and acquisitions, but big partnership deals such as Nintendo with DNA, Activision with Tencent, and EA with NetEase. One of the biggest things to happen to the mobile games market this year will be changes to the IDFA, or the Identifier for Advertisers, on the Apple App Store. As of iOS 14, users will need to opt in for tracking when an app is opened. The effect of this is that advertisers will have much less visibility on mobile users, as it is expected that many users will simply not opt in. Adjust claims that 20% of iOS users already cannot be tracked through the IDFA because they have limit ad tracking turned on, and this latest update will make it even more challenging for publishers. This is a move that will seemingly affect everyone, from publishers that focus on games with in-app purchases, who will have new challenges targeting users, to hyper-casual publishers who acquire users en masse and whose entire business model really relies on bringing in millions of players through user acquisition. I won't be going too deep into this huge topic in this presentation, but I advise you to check out user acquisition expert Eric Seufert's thoughts on IDFA, from whom I have cheekily stolen the image for this slide from one of his articles. Check out his articles over on Mobile Dev Memo, or if you prefer to get insights in audio form, listen to his chat with the Deconstructor of Fun team on their podcast. Lastly, on our trends before we get to COVID-19, is China's App Store licensing crackdown. For a quick bit of history, it's actually been part of the regulations in China for a while now that mobile games on its stores need to be approved and obtain an ISBN to be released in the country. This ensures that these titles adhere to the country's strict regulations and content requirements. While Android stores have adhered to this, the App Store has acted as an open grey market of sorts, with publishers able to release titles without an ISBN on the store. This is no longer the case moving forward, however, and what's more, publishers that already have games on the App Store without an ISBN have until July 31st to provide one, or their game will be removed. I should note, though, that for now, this only affects premium games and those with in-app purchases. So free games that monetize solely through ads are unaffected by this particular measure. As a result of this crackdown, in the first 7 days of July, more than 2,500 mobile games were removed from the App Store. These titles generated a combined $34.7 million in lifetime gross revenue. So when we're talking about China, this is small fry really, and could indicate that the market won't be greatly affected overall, at least when it comes to total revenue generation, but we'll know more after the end of July. Ultimately, this crackdown makes it yet more challenging for international companies to release their games in China. It's worth noting that it will also be challenging for ad-focused games to be successful in China following this crackdown. According to My Games, in an article on GamesIndustry.biz, titles that don't have an ISBN will not be able to run social ads on channels owned by Tencent and ByteDance, limiting the user acquisition capabilities of publishers who perhaps may try to avoid licensing requirements. So next, we're going to look at how the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the mobile games market. First up, we'll look at global downloads. As you can see from this chart, which expands on the chart from the start of this presentation, there was a very noticeable increase in mobile game installs in Q1 2020 and Q2 2020. In Q1, downloads shot up 21% quarter over quarter and 39% year over year to 13.4 billion. In Q2 2020, meanwhile, downloads grew further, rising by 12.2% quarter over quarter and 44.4% year over year. Downloads finally peaked in April 2020 at some 5.5 billion for the month, which really coincided with the peak of the global pandemic and lockdowns, which would begin easing in various countries over the following months. The games that were able to benefit most from this were those that helped connect consumers remotely and had social aspects to them. This included Words with Friends 2, Scrabble Go, Roblox, Fortnite, just to name a few. Though of course, with Words with Friends 2 and Scrabble Go, these games are competing, so you would expect to see competition in downloads following the launch of the latter by Scopely. Next, we can look at revenue and see how it follows on from downloads. Revenue had a smaller increase in Q1 2020 than downloads, rising 6.6% quarter over quarter and 16% year over year to $17.5 billion. This was because revenue lagged behind downloads, and what we saw was a significant rise in Q2, which you can see is larger than in previous years. Q2 2020 revenue was up 10.7% quarter over quarter and 28% year over year to $19.4 billion. Revenue peaked in May at $6.6 billion, 1 month after downloads peaked in April. It's currently unclear whether a rise in user spending can be maintained, and that will depend on a number of factors, including the economic outlook and whether new consumer habits will stick. To get a bit more specific about which categories saw the biggest boost during lockdown, we've taken a look at the US mobile games market. In the US, downloads spiked in March 2020 amid shelter-in-place orders, resulting in an increase in installs from the top genres, including hyper-casual, puzzle, simulation, and lifestyle. By June, downloads for hyper-casual, puzzle, and arcade games had fallen below their respective totals in January. Simulation and lifestyle games, meanwhile, were able to maintain most of the increase from earlier in the year. Overall, game category downloads in the US fell below January levels by June, but were above February at 445.7 million, we expect the baseline for game downloads to be above pre-COVID-19 levels moving forward. Revenue in the US mobile games market peaked a couple months after the increase in downloads. The top 200 games combined for nearly $1.5 billion in US in May, though revenue decreased across the top genres in June. Similar to downloads, revenue growth was also distributed across the top genres and was especially high for simulation and shooter games, which each saw quarter-over-quarter growth of nearly 50% in Q2 2020. Overall, revenue peaked in May at $1.9 billion, lagging behind downloads and coinciding with states across the country easing lockdown measures. The top 5 grossing games during Q2 2020 in the US were Roblox, Candy Crush Saga, Coin Master, Fortnite, and Gardenscapes. I've alluded to some of our forecasts in the previous slides, but here you can see some more specifics in our predictions through to 2024. Downloads are expected to increase by 35.7% year over year in 2020 to 57 billion as a result of the global pandemic and lockdowns, which is a significant jump from 2019. Over the next few years, mobile games are forecasted for higher growth than apps in terms of downloads. The COVID-19 boost to mobile game downloads is likely to be persistent, leading to an increase in installs from our previous forecast for the years ahead, as consumers are turning to their phones even more than they ever have before. 2020 will see the largest revenue jump over the next few years, rising by 14.3% year over year to $72 billion. App Store game revenue is projected to grow 51% by 2024, or at a CAGR of 8.5%, while the Google Play games category will have a CAGR of 10.2% between 2019 and 2024. While downloads will experience a rise compared to our previous forecast prior to the pandemic, our revenue predictions are similar to what we had before, in part due to a worsened economic outlook. To sum up the key takeaways from this presentation, as I've just mentioned, the COVID-19 pandemic has clearly had a significant impact on both downloads and revenue, at least in the short term. In the long term, we expect downloads to continue to surge, which is why we've raised our forecast through to 2024. Other key takeaways are that the mobile games market is growing for everybody, not just the top grossing games. Mergers and acquisitions will continue to ramp up in a mature mobile games market. Further enforcements of regulations in China will make it more challenging for international publishers to enter the market, though that won't make it impossible. The App Store's IDFA changes will impact how many of the publishers can conduct their user acquisition campaigns globally. But despite all these challenges, the games market and the world faces, this sector continues to thrive. So that's it for me. Thanks everybody for listening to this presentation. If you have any questions about what I've discussed today, or you would like to reach out, you can email me at craig.chappell@sensortower.com. If you're interested in finding out more about the platform and how it can help your business and give you a competitive advantage, you can reach out to our expert team by emailing sales@sensortower.com, and they can guide you through the platform and the services we offer. You can also check out our website at www.sensortower.com. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and enjoy the rest of the GamesIndustry.biz live State of Play event. Thanks and have a great day.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Craig. Thank you, Sensor Tower, for sharing that mobile data with us. Our next talk is on in just a few moments. It's on at 7 o'clock UK time, 2 o'clock Eastern time, 11 o'clock Pacific time. It's going to be on the essential facts about the US games industry, and we've got the ESA president, Stanley Pierre-Louise, to share that information with us. So come back then on live.gamesindustry.biz or on our YouTube channel, and we'll see you in a few seconds.